Everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to play some more You Make This House a Home. This day it's day 3. It's a Yandere Dane sim. If you haven't seen their video, let's begin. Here's the end of day 1. Wednesday, 10:13 a.m. Bane. You wake up to start, and you immediately plunge into a state of panic. Bang. Bane. There was a disturbing sound of brunt force hitting the wall every now and then. But aside from that, you quickly came to the realization that you couldn't move your fingers. Your hands were taped up. You couldn't move them anymore. You tried to struggle against the tight bindings to no avail. Bang, bang, bang. You flinched at the sound of the harsh banging coming from the hallway. You struggled to sit up, the sticky bits of the messy tape job catching on the fabric as you slide your fingers off the side of the bed. There was a brief pause in the banging as a shuffle of your feet on the door of your bedroom before the rush of footsteps approaching your door. You instinctively take a step backwards, your palm helplessly at the round doorknob, unable to use your dexterity to open the door. Then I use my mouth. He slams the door open, bursting in with a hammer in hand and a wild look in his eyes. Good morning, Lion. You step backwards for the back of your knees brushing up against your bed once more as the sight of the figure you had familiarized yourself with looming past your door frame with a hammer in hand. He glanced down at the tool in his gasp, his ink-dark fingers wrapping around the handle far too comfortably for your liking. He smiled slowly, tucking the hammer behind his back, then instability in his eyes glitting unnervingly. It was just about finished anyways, honey. He suddenly crawled you on the bed, laying down with the hammer still behind his back. Come on, I'll help you downstairs. He was eager to take one of your bound hands to his, easily leading you out of your room downstairs. Cole looked happy to be the one in control of the situation. He was off, way off. So much so, it was concerning. He smiled widely as he set you down in your seat, scrolling to put the hammer down on the kitchen counter and hastily throwing on his apron before taking his place laying over the table. He plants his elbows on the table, laying in very, very close. His breath is uneven, his eyes bright with a kind of frantic relief. See? Everything's fine now, just as it was. His voice is soft, but the softness feels stretched thin, like a thread pulled too tight. Okay, the most pressing matter is, why are my fingers taped up? Things have been a bit unfair around here, you know. Are you upset with me? He smiles momentarily. Francie doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, just stares. Upset? Repeats the word like it's foreign. No, sweetheart. I'm not upset. He suddenly gets serious, lowering his voice. If I was upset, you know. Pretty sure you don't want me to escape. A chill crawls up my spine. He exhales shakily, rubbing his face with one hand, like he's just exhausted, as you are. You were. I'm not upset, I'm just tired, and I know I don't want you to scare you anymore. I think typing my hands scares me a lot. He reaches out, brushing his thumb over your taped fingers. Let's just not do that again. He smiles down. His eyes are not. Let's have breakfast, okay? A good, fresh start. He turns back to the counter, humming under his breath. The same melody from the past 2 days. You watch him move around the kitchen. He's not cooking bacon or eggs like usual. Instead, he reaches for a box of cereal in the cabinet under the silverware. Cereal? Something simple. Something easy on your stomach. And something that you'd have to feed me, because no fingers. He pours the cereal into the bowl, adds milk, and stirs it with a spoon, all casual like. Then he brings a bowl to the table. I don't need the milk in there, though. I'll eat it plain. I don't like milk. He sits down in front of you with a bright smile. Cole, I can't eat this. My hands. He cuts you off with a soft laugh. I know, that's why I made something I could feed you. You tense up. He even takes the freedom to feed yourself from you. He had completely shattered his trust. Now everything was under his control again. He scooped up a spoonful of cereal, holding it up with a tenderness that feels horribly outplaced as he held the spoon to your mouth. Open up, sweetheart. Why cereal? You never made cereal. Make cereal. His eyes narrow a bit. Question time is over, honey. He nudged the spoon towards your mouth again. Eat. You hesitate. You open your mouth. He beams. Good job. Good job. He feeds you slowly, by spoonful, watching your face with intensity that makes your skin prickle. Your eyes follow every swallow, tracing the curve of your throat as it continued to smile approvingly. See, this is nice, just us. No running around, no secrets. Call. Shh, eat first, talk after. He scoops another spoonful, bringing it to your lips. You can't tell if he's trying to comfort you or keep you quiet. He scoops another spoonful, but his hands tremble, just barely. You almost miss it. Are you trembling like me? Keep eating. You open your mouth, accepting the next bite. I know it's scary. You're being very brave. He sets the bowl aside when Cicely he has poured what's gone, brushing your hair with gentle fingers. You know I love you, right? I will always take care of you. Cole cleared the table with a giggly feeling about him. He set the bowl and spoon in the sink. Clearly he was delighted, even as he spoke. Also, please don't try to undo the tape. Cole tripped, his voice suddenly airy. His eyes flicker down, tear-taped fingers. The adhesive stark and ugly against your skin. If I find out you've been picking at that tape, or trying to wiggle your way out of my care, we'll have to find something a bit more permanent than tape to keep those hands still. I was allergic to adhesive. He beamed, the warning delivered with the same cadence one might use to tell a child not to touch a hot stove. It was a contrast that made the hair on your arms stand up. The genuine, radiating affection and expression prepared with the implied threat of their restraint. He stepped away, humming the same haunting melody again, his apron now folded neatly and tucked away. Cole's grip on your arm was firm, a constant reminder that your orbit now centered entirely around him. Let's get settled in the living room, honey. Cole mumbled, his voice regained the sing-along quality that always felt like it was masking a jaded edge. He steered you into the living room with lightness in his step, his hand constant, guiding weight in your elbow. He settled you onto the plush fabric of the sofa, the cushions sighing beneath your weight. For a moment he stood still there, gazing down at you with an expression of such raw, starving adoration that felt more oppressive than the tape in your fingers. It's far too quiet in here, don't you think? He asked, tilting his head. A home needs a heartbeat, and the room is far too breathless. He leaned in, pressing a quick, dry kiss to your cheek that left a lingering sensation of coldness. Stay right here. You can look around at things here. But please don't go anywhere. I'm going to find my record player. I believe I left it in the hall closet downstairs during the last spring cleaning. Some music will settle your nerves, and perhaps mine as well. With a final lingering pat on your shoulder, he retreated, his footsteps receding behind the stairs. There was a sound of a door opening and closing, and Carl's footsteps descending. You didn't know there was a basement. Without his constant presence, the living room felt less like a sanctuary and more like a well-decorated waiting room for something inevitable. Or a prison. Definitely a prison. He shifted her gaze, scanning the room from the safety of the sofa. The coffee table set within arm's reach, bearing a small, precious stack of Polaroids. They were haphazardly piled, the white borders yellowed on the edges, capturing frozen slivers of life he couldn't recall and he weren't around for. A few feet to your right, two frames rested there, though they offered no comfort. One laid face down, as the memory within had been deemed too painful to behold. Perhaps it set a neat family photo. It seemed normal, save for the faces of the parents that had been meticulously torn away, jagged with white paper, reminding you that their features should have been. What are you most curious about? Polaroids. Each photo is years apart, but all seem to be from the same camera. The rhythmic thumping of the footsteps echo from the depths. Actually, we could just go and do every single thing. Oh, wow. It's hard to discern what exactly you're looking at. Was it a wedding? You glance at the family photo. Our two people had their faces torn off as well. The photo in your hands clearly was more aged. Maybe it was his parents' wedding photo. But why did he have this? Let's go back. This one. It's a family photo. And he's seeing three figures. A fragile thin woman. A tall man. And what appears to be Carl as a child. He's clearly displeased, whether with his family or the situation. You weren't sure. You couldn't help but wonder why he had torn their faces off. I think he got all his powers from his mom. And Dad. Was their relationship truly that bad? And that's why he's hiding them. The root thumping of the footsteps echo from the depths of the house, growing louder and more certain as Kyle descends the stairs back towards the living room. You counted a modest vintage record player against his chest like a prize infant, a few vinyl sheets tucked carefully under his arm. There was a slight pleased flush to his pale cheeks, and he walked with a light, rhythmic bounce in his step that made him look almost adorably domestic. A man returned from a successful errand in his own home. Found it. He chirped, his voice airy and bright. He moved a space amongst the haunted perlites to set down the machine. He handed the equipment with a level of tenderness that bordered on reverence, his long, rubbery fingers delicately sliding a record from its sleeve. He didn't look at you immediately, too absorbed in the ritual of the needle green the grove, expression one of serene, uncompensated contentment. As the first notes of the slow, metallic piece drifted into the room, Cal finally looked up. The music seemed to soften his posture. The silence of the house was gone, replaced by a soft melody that he quickly recognized to be the song he often hummed under his breath. Though the music felt less like comfort and more like a current being drawn over the exits. Better, isn't it? His voice barely whispered over the piano. The atmosphere is everything, Lan. It transforms the house into a sanctuary. He stepped closer, the distance between you closing slowly. He didn't touch you this time, but the way he lingered just outside your personal space felt like a claim. You look so thoughtful. What's on your mind, my love? I hope it's alright that I looked at your framed photos. Oh, which one? His eyes trailed off to the fireplace mantel. Your little family. Oh, yeah. I was a cute kid, right? Kyle blinked spectrally, his large eyes full of expectation. He seemed to thrive on praise and compliments, however rarely given. Yes, you have a cute baby face, for sure. Kyle giggled softly, his blush deepening. That's nice of you to say. You looked so angry. Well, I didn't exactly want to be there. He glanced over at the picture. But in the end, they were still my parents. I didn't have to say on what happened. Did you hate your parents that much? Yes. You said that a little too quickly. Well, that's a touch harsh. He squinted his eyes thoughtfully. It's more like I felt for them. How much they felt for me. Which was a lot. Tell me more. You really want to know? He tilted his head, studying your face, as if searching for something. It's nothing interesting. He looks back towards the photo. His thin, neglected mother, and his tall, angry father. Faces he doesn't care to even keep around his house. They weren't bad people. They just didn't know what to do with me. His voice softens, almost nostalgic, but not fond. I wasn't an easy child. I didn't work like them. I didn't act like them. And I didn't try to understand what was wrong with me. He sighed as if even thinking about his childhood was putting a damper on his mood. There really wasn't much to do with me. I'll give them that. But it's the lack of effort that ultimately drove me away. Exhaled slowly, shoulder sinking. The record continued to play a soft melody, filling the empty gaps of their space with something warm. I think they were afraid of me, and I think I was afraid of them. He turns back to you, expression unreadable. Was he expecting you to speak now? Did you ever find out what was wrong? I beat, mostly. Cole looked back at the photo one last time before turning fully towards you. I don't want to talk about them anymore. I want to talk about us. He studies your face for a long, quiet moment. You look tired. He says gently, just loud enough to be in your space, but not too much to be anything else but caring. He shifts closer to the couch, knees brushing yours. I hate seeing you like this. I'm fine. It gives you a look that says he doesn't believe a word of it. You always say that. But your veins, his fingers twitching at their sides, you always believe me. I will. Kyle lets out a slow breath, grounding himself. Thank you for spending time with me. You spend a few more moments together, quietly existing with each other as Cole switches out the record a few more times. Exchanging memories for time, speaking fondly of experiences you had no memories of. Eventually, you got up to prepare lunch. Liking our day. You fall after your boyfriend, hovering around the kitchen. You didn't want to bother him, but there really wasn't much else to do. Cole? Yes, my love? Cole tripped, reaching for his apron. But but pausing halfway to respond. Would you mind making me something other than a sandwich? He leaned over the table, towards where he stood. You don't like it? I don't know. I could use something different every now and then. He shrugged. Cole's face was hard to read for a moment before he smiled widely. I'd love to. Cole's voice was steady over the rhythmic tapping of a knife hitting the cutting board. Lots of people have told me that the silence of the house was eerie, since it was usually so empty, but I find it clarifying. The scent of toasted sourdough and melted cheese began to drift through the air. It was a domestic smell, something that belonged to the cozy cottage, not in a place where the doors were padlocked and windows were boarded up. He watched him through the doorway, his movements fluid and precise, the pink apron he wore contrasting sharply with the intensity of his focused gaze. Lunch is almost ready. He had his tone shifting into that warm, honeyed cadence that always made you forget, for a split second, that you were a prisoner of his affection. He planned the grilled cheese with precision, cutting the sandwich into two perfect triangles. He set a bowl of tomato soup beside it. Oh, I don't need the tomato soup. I'll take the, sandwich. As someone has ordered the tomato. As you sat down at the small wooden table, the silence he praised felt heavier than usual. He slid the plate towards you, the golden brown crust of the sandwich glistening under the kitchen light. Pretty plate, aye? He picked out the sandwich, cheese stretching in satisfied gooey string. How am I picking it with, just no fingers? I was just thinking that you were very precise, even with the food. Everything's always so symmetrical. Cole let out a soft, hummed laugh, laying his chin on his hand as he watched you take your first bite. Precision is a form of love, do you think? To care for the smallest detail is to care for the whole. Plus, I used to be a chef. The conversation drifted. Circling around the mundane, Cole was in a practically good mood, his topics light and his voice airy. What kind of cheese is this? He had to ask between bites. It was decent, salty, but not too salty. It's cheddar. And I'm not going to pronounce that one. At least it's not American. Cole responded easily. The last in my fridge, actually. I don't typically eat cheese that much anymore. Grimar? I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. That's what I said. Yeah, that's what I totally said. He leaned into the playful banter and almost masked all the things tucked away. It was easy to lose yourself in the warmth of the room. The feeling of being cherished by someone who noticed every minor detail about you. However, as the meal wound down, the air shifted. Cole didn't move to clear the plates. Instead, he stayed leaned in, his eyes scanning your face, with a intensity that felt less like affection and more like an audit. He was searching for something, a flicker of recognition, a sign of returning memory, or perhaps just a sign that you were still under the spell. He smiled warmly as he cleared the table. If you want some time to yourself, now's the time, my love. You nodded. Your gaze trailed to the corner Cal had disappeared past to get his record player. You were curious about the basement. Cole called out over his shoulder before he could go. Oh, would you like something different for dinner as well? Yeah, that sounds really nice. He hummed out the acknowledgement, finalizing your conversation. He glanced back at Cole, who was humming softly to himself as he washed the plate and bowl. He drifted further into the hallway, past the living room, and the stairs back up, your fingertips trailing along the bland wallpaper. That was when you saw it, a narrow door, tucked behind a shadowed corner. Unlike the other doors, it wasn't boarded up, or even locked up. It was simply closed, with a handle that felt like ice cold, and against your palm. You press your ear to the wood. There was no sound, but there was a draft. A thin, sharp current of air that smelled of damp concrete and something rottily metallic, like old rusted pennies. Well, if it's rotting and it's metallic, I don't want to go in there. It was the only place in the house, that didn't smell like Cole's perceived warmth. The door pulled open easily, without noise. He flickered on the light switch next to the door, revealing a steep set of wooden stairs that plunged downward into a yawning void of darkness. Your heart drummed a frantic rhythm against your ribs. After another moment of doubt, he flicked the light off and slowly closed the door. Oh, heck no. You were curious, but not that curious. As you turn around to head back to the living room, you jump a little out of your skin at the sight of Cole leaning down the hallway, with his record player tucked neatly under his arm. Expression is scared, but relieved, and while silence passes between you two, there's nothing down there. Cole said momentarily, I believe you, Cole. Just junk, that cluttered space up here they don't have room for. Understand, Cole? Knowing him, he's probably lying. Oh, he's definitely lying. But at the same time, you weren't too sure if you want to find out this truth. You don't have to be careful around me, honey. Cole mumbled. His voice regained terms of tenderness as he stepped closer. You could be curious. You could even be suspicious. I always loved that spark in you. The way you refuse to just accept the world as it's handed to you. You reach out a brush that stands of hair from your forehead. For a moment, the tension from the basement door dissipated, replaced by the suffocating sweet domesticity. He shrugged towards the living room, signaling that that's where you should be. Away from here. He stepped past you towards the basement, opening the door and shutting behind him. A telltale click informing you that he'd locked it behind him. The afternoon stretches into a slow, syrupy blur. Cal spent the hours in a state of high-functioning devotion. He didn't hover, but he's always there. A shadow in the periphery, a soft footfall in the hallway, a sudden warm hand in your shoulder as you read. Each time you caught his eye, he beamed with a quiet pride, as if your mere presence in the room were a trophy had won. To him, we have because we obeyed and kept dustless. However, as the lights began to fall, shifting from a pale gold to bruising purple outside the cracks of the shutters, the atmosphere shifted. Kyle retreated to the kitchen, the thumping of his prepped work echoing through the house. The evening has passed quickly, morally so, and before you knew it, you were in bed. Wednesday, question mark. The silence of the house usually kept like a blanket, but tonight it felt like a veil. You woke up with rhythmic, gritting scrapping that echoed up through the floorboards. You lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to the cadence of the noise. Scrape, swirl, crush. Scrape, swirl, crush. It wasn't until you heard a soft knocking at the front door did you finally snap to alertness. A cold curiosity, sharper than your fear, nudged you out of bed. You creep out your bedroom door. Your feet find the cold spot on the floorboard, hard wood to avoid the creaks. From the top of the stairs, you saw his tendrils moving to open the door. You slowly peered down the stairs, carefully not to be seen. Cal was sitting at the table, for the chair he usually sat at was repositioned. Oh, he's mashing some stuff. He's trying to put in our meals. He was using a mortar and pestle, the heavy stone bowl, grinding something light and brittle into fine chalky powder. Yeah, I think I know what it is. The first clue's right here. He watches the way his shoulders shifted. The tension in his frame suggested a level of concentration that bordered on desperation. When the door unlocked, another person opened the front door from their side. Where were you? You're late. Your eyes wide at the sight of unfamiliar man entering the house. A tall, dark-skinned man with long blonde locks, holding a paper bag of what looked to be groceries. I'm sorry. His voice was low, lower than Cole's, but with a constant, exhausted tone. Got held up at work. He set a bag down on the table next to Cal, beginning to quietly unfold the items. This week has been so difficult, Cal murmured, going back to quietly crushing the pills. Yeah, it's making it easier to eat. How did he know that I can't swallow pills? Wayne is upset with me. I kept messing up. The man moved around the kitchen with as much precision as Cal does, tucking a loaf of bread into the cabinet, placing a fresh carton of eggs in the refrigerator. Cal continues to catch up in details of the events of the past few days, expressing his feelings and thoughts on things he had kept secret from you. What really caught your eye was the newly filled bottles. He slowly pulled out at the end. I want to know what they are and what he's giving me. The same ones Cole was crushing. What did those pills do? Was Cole faking them? Just think that everything is going to end really soon, Cole mumbled, indicating the last of his thoughts. Doesn't this feel like a rising action until the big thing happens? Until the big thing happens that decides how the rest of our lives play out? Their man just nods his head. It was clear he wasn't a very talkative guy. What you hadn't seen coming was the small white handkerchief he pulled out of his pocket, along with a small bottle of something clear. He poured some onto the cloth, slowly walking behind Cole's line of sight as he continued to murmur quietly to himself. I'm sure you're right. Oh, I think we're gonna have to retreat, he hummed before pressing the cloth onto Cal's mouth and nose. He squeaked with surprise and struggling for a moment, before immediately slumping forward. Are we saved? His floating strands of hair slowly began to drop and fall, though some stayed connected to the ceiling. Phew. Their man sighed quietly, tossing the cloth into the sink and looking down at his passed-out friend. What really shocked you was when he began speaking again. I didn't mean for you to see that. I was planning on waking you up myself, but I guess this is fine too. He turned around to look directly at where you were sitting on the stairs. Come on, let's talk. Your heart hammered against your ribs. For a long moment you didn't move, your grip tightened on the banister as you stared at the man who just completely knocked out the guy keeping you in his house. The shock of seeing Cal, usually so poised, slumped over the table like a broken doll, was jarring. Escape. But it was the man's gaze that anchored you. His eyes weren't harsh like Cal's, but tired, weighing with awareness that felt relatable. So you descend the stairs, and you sit through the kitchen. The sharp chemical scent of the chloroform lingered behind the air. Did you chloroform a monster? You got balls. You stomped a few feet away from him, your eyes darting from the unconscious form of Call to the man who just played the role of infiltrator. I'm Zeke, he said, his voice calm and rumbled. That didn't match his actions. He didn't move towards you, and he didn't look like he really wanted to. Cal's old friend. And you're my rescuer? He gestured vaguely towards the passed-out figure of Cal. Sorry about the dramatics. He doesn't like hearing things he doesn't want to. But he's real stubborn. You look at the knocked over molder and pistols. The white powder still clinging to the stone, and then back to the pills bottles. The realization their daily recovery was probably a curve of chemical haze hit you like an infamy. Okay, what is he? I want to ask Zeke, what is he? You turned back to Zeke, and was already nodding slowly like he knew that you had put the pieces together. I'm not actually sick, am I? He slowly shook his head, no. He's feeding me family stuff to have me forget things, isn't he? He slowly nods again, his lips pressed into a tight line. And are you my savior or we could escape? You can glance at Cal, his expression softened into something like pity as he rubbed the back of his neck. He thinks he's saving you, in his own twisted way, but the truth is he's just terrified of you running away from him when you remember everything he's done. Okay, can you tell me what he's done? Which you absolutely should. He's as irredeemable as irredeemable gets. Well, he's kind of cute, though. But that's why I'm here, Wyan. I blinked. He blinked. Huh? I'm getting out here. But we can't do it now. There's still some things I have to do. He whipped around Kel, still very much unconscious as his kitchen table, and back at Zeke, with a dumbfounded look. Why not now? It's a long story. Are you sure? Because I could just walk out the door with you. Zeke sighed, walking towards the table once more. But I suppose we do have all night. He stares at Cal's body with unsure expression. He slowly dragged his hands into Cal's pocket, pulling out a key. He hesitated for a moment before laying down to hoist up his friend's underarm like an animal. I like how he's like, yep, I'm picking him up. He looks stupid. No, he just looks tired. He looks kind of adorable. They both did. He stared blankly at you with no words. You didn't know what exactly it was he was waiting for. You squint your eyes a little, making a face. He shifts Kyle around, grumbling softly as he slings over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes instead. Wow. He stared at you again, as if silently asking if this was better. And make a cry expression, shrugging your shoulders. It's like, nah, it's funny. He shrugs his own, turning towards the stairs with Cal slumped heavily on his arm. Zeke navigated the stairs with a rhythmic, heavy thud, after clicking on the lights. So, Cal's gonna remember last week he used the same medication, right? Cal's limp body bounced slightly against his shoulder with every step. It was the real image, the domestic terror of the house, reduced to a piece of luggage being hauled upstairs. He followed close behind, you curiously overriding the lingering fear. Your footsteps light and hurried as you tried to keep pace with the taller man. Zeke fumbled with the key and the padlock with one hand. He tried to slip past Zeke to see inside his room, but surprisingly firm arms suddenly barred your path. It wasn't a shove, just a firm, steady boundary that halted your movement. Wait here, please. Zeke's voice was barely a vibration. He watched from the hallway, listening to the muffled sound of Call being dropped onto the mattress. A moment later, the door clicked shut, and Zeke reappeared, laying his back against the wall, across his arm over his chest. The dim hallway light cast deep shadows across his face, making him look like someone who had spent far too many nights dealing with things that should exist. "All right," Zeke said, his gaze scanning your face. "You got 1,000 questions. I can see them spiraling in your head. Start with the big one." "Okay, I really want to know, who are you really? We already know what the pills do. What are you really?" Zeke shifted his weight, his shoulders leaning harder into the wall as his physical pressure helped him hold back the words. "A coward. I'm someone who waited too long to finally do something." He looked at you with a strange sort of warmth. "Look, I'm gonna be honest. I know you know more than Cal thinks you do. I've been weeding you off the medication by emptying half the bottle and filling them with duds." The air in the hallway seemed too thin. Every time he had felt a flicker of clarity. Every time the fog had lifted just enough to make you question the locks on the doors. That had been him. "I know you're probably really confused. I'm sorry. I'm doing this for you and for Cal. This session he has with you is ruining you both. And eventually you'll do that, and he'll die of starvation." "He'll die of starvation?" "He can't sustain himself out in the energy of a dying mind for long. I care about you too much to let that happen, okay?" "Wait, I'm dying and he's... Okay, yep, let me go." You nodded after a moment, slowly adjusting the words. "Any day now, Cal won't be able to keep up that form for much longer. It's been slipping out of his control more and more every day. And if he doesn't eat..." Zeke trails off, his voice dropping into a whisper. "Bottom line is, I don't want that to happen. I don't know how you feel about any of this, but I'm being selfish here. I can't help myself. You just need to trust me." "What do the pills do?" Zeke let out a long, slow breath. "They're sort of a eraser. They target the short-term memories and emotional triggers that keep you grounded for who you are." "Why would he do that? Why would he want me to forget everything?" His expression remains the same. "Because Cal is a rotting monster." "Yikes. Oh, I wasn't being mean. He's literally a monster, and he's literally rotting." He paused, then did something unexpected. He wiggled his hair. They moved independently of each other, glittering like snakes, for only an instant before it stopped. "Creatures like him, creatures like me, we can't be exposed to humans for too long in this state without things starting to degrade. You start to go insane. You start to lose your grip on reality, your identity, and your will, as you were doing." So he's a monster too. The only way he thought he could prevent that crazy was to make you forget. If you didn't remember the things that were triggering the breakdown, you thought you could stay here with him. He looks at you. His eyes wait with profound sadness. He did want to help you, Lion. He just went crazy along the way. "Okay, where's Phoebe?" Cal mentioned Phoebe. He asked, your voice trembling. "The photo. Cal said we were all friends once." "Where is she? If you're here to let me out, is she already gone?" Zake's gaze dropped to the floor. The exhaustion in his eyes looked like grief. He didn't answer immediately, the silence stretching until the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs sounded like a scream. Phoebe was the first to rise. What Cal's devotion was really a hunger. "She's dead," was all he said. "Why are you in my house?" Zeke let out a dry, huffing a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't for a devoid of humor. "Technically, this isn't your house," he corrected softly. "It's just a place where Cal decided you were be safest." which, as you probably know, is by the medication and the locked doors, is his way of saying where I can keep you under my thumb. He said you were friends. If you're friends, why are you knocking him out and sneaking around? Zake's gaze drifted towards the closed bedroom door. We were a long time ago, before Cal decided that love meant this. He doesn't see people as people anymore. He didn't just want your affection, Ryan. He wanted your anonymity. He wanted to be the only thing you remember, the only person you need. Those stuff don't just cause memory loss. They purge the part of your mind that makes you want to leave. The revelation made your heart drop to your feet. Every kind gesture Kyle had ever made over the last few days. The careful meals, the soft words, the obsessive attention suddenly felt like a rapid performance. Because they were. You looked at Zeke, because he's probably putting that stuff in your meals. You looked at Zeke, really looking at him, noticing the way he didn't seem surprised by any of this. What, so, is this coming from some sort of savior complex? Savior complex? You must be joking. It's a place of concern, bird. Zeke gently pats your head. It was a sort of awkward gesture, but it felt nice. It wasn't a touch that demanded anything from you. You should head to bed, sleep. I'll be gone when you wake up, but I won't be far. He glanced at the storage room. It'll be better if you had your phone, though. I guess I'll have to deal with that, too. He mumbled softly to himself. Guess I'm all busy tonight. He watches you return to your room before heading downstairs to discard of the items. Thank you, YouTube. I'm just being careful. The carefully light was turned off and the house was quiet once again. ... End of demo for now. Thank you for playing. Maybe try again for a new route. You might find something new. Turn your head away. You turn your head sharply. The spoon bumps your cheek. He freezes. The air thickens. Why look at me? You don't. He exhales through his nose. This was a risk. I'm trying so hard to make this easy for you. He sets the bowl down with a soft click. But you make everything so difficult when you wake up like this. He grabs your jaw, your chin pressed in the emmets between his thumb and a pointed finger as they both kept your head in place. His touch is no longer gentle, as he had been the past few days. This was firm and patient. You think I'm doing this for me? Oh, I think you are. This is for you, honey. You think I gain anything other than a reassured state of mind that my love of my life is well fed and nourished? You try to open your mouth to speak, but his hand is still gripped your jaw, his eyes twitching. The answer is no, my love. I get nothing. All I ever receive from you is nothing. He lets go eventually, after a tense moment staring it into your eyes, standing up to measure his temples as if claying the table. You don't want to eat. You don't have to eat. Go then. Not like you could do much harm with your hands like that anyway. It was firm dismissal. He was losing his patience with you. You get up from the living room. The house has a weight to it, a heavy velvet quality that seems to swallow the sound of your own breathing. You step into the living room. It was a space designed for comfort, yet felt like a prison. This could say a prison. You wander towards the center of the room, noticing how the lack of interior walls create a strange, pathetic feeling. You were always in view of the kitchen, and the kitchen was always in view of you. The coffee table set centrally, holding a stack of Polaroids. You paused the fireplace. Man, okay, I think I could skip now. What are you most curious about? Okay, I'm gonna look at the photos. Each photo is years apart, but they seem to be from the same camera. Oh, some of them are not found. He glanced back at Cal, who was organizing and reorganizing his glassware with empty eyes, as if completely lost in the repetitive domestic action of it. You defer into the hallway, past the living room, and the stairs back up, your fingertips trailing along the bland wallpaper. That's when you saw it, a narrow door, tucked behind a shadowed corner. Unlike the other doors, it wasn't boarded up or even locked up. It was simply closed, with a handle that felt ice cold against your palm, even through the tape. Right, the tape. You used the other hand's thumb to try to wedge it under the small gap that formed around the edges of the tape due to sweat. You would get free enough for you to pull the tape off with your teeth. You press your ear to the wood as you used your free hand to quietly undo your hand. There was no sound, but there was a draft. A thin, sharp current of air, the smell of damp concrete and something ruddily metallic, like old rusted pennies. It was the only place in the house that didn't smell of coal's pervasive warmth. The door pulled open easily, and without noise. You flicker on the light switch next to the door, revealing a steep steps wooden stairs that played downward into the yawning void darkness. Your heart thumping a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You step onto the first stair, the wood creaking under your weight, with a sound that felt like a warning. You froze, glancing back at your shoulder, where you could see Kyle's form still stacking plates neatly on top of each other. You descend carefully. The light from overhead shrank, leaving you enveloped in a gloom that felt almost liquid. The basement didn't feel any colder. It felt like the house above was merely skin stretched over something much more sinister. Because it is. As you reached the bottom step, the light switch you flipped downstairs proved to be the only light source. The river calm, casting along glittering shadows that seemed to be dancing independently of your movements. The air was thick and stagnant, the smell of death and rot clinging to your skin like a wet sheet. You felt a surge to gag, pulling up the collar of your shirt to try to filter cleaner air. I don't think that'll work. You took a step forward, and the sound of your footfall didn't echo. It was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the concrete floor. As you ventured deeper, the domestic facade of the home disappeared entirely. This wasn't a basement. It was something bad. Something really, really bad. Or we can find Penelope. A cellar designed for things that were meant to be forgone permanently. To your left, a haunted-looking door. You paused, your breath hitched in your throat. Across from the door was a cabinet. The surface was stained and wrapped with something dark and suspicious. There was 2 boxes on top, both stained at the bottom with something dark and thick. The entire room was rancid of acid, chemical-like metal smell. It was like a little sweet? Poison? Because apparently poison tastes sweet. I want to count it. I don't want to prove that fact at all. What are you most curious about? Okay, let's look around. A door? A cabinet? Is there anything else? Look at the cabinet. You reach out, your fingertips brushing against the cabinet warped surface. The residue is tacky. A dark mahogany colored crust that's swooped into the grain of the wood. At first, you mistake it for old vanish, or perhaps a spilled bottle of syrup from years ago. But you lean closer. The scent hits you in a physical blow. The sweetness isn't sugary. It's clayey. Heavy aroma of organic decay. A thick perfume of something that's been left to liquefy in the dark. It's the smell of a slaughterhouse hidden beneath a floral curtain. Fumbling, you pull the cabinet door open. The hinges squeal, as if the secrets kept behind were crying out. Nestled behind the layer of gray dust and dark moths sit a small cardboard box with a shoebox. It's a shoebox. Inside the shoebox were papers and the box of matches. Once you examine everything in the box, continue. It says last will and testament of I'm not gonna butcher it. At the very top, the child who receives her inheritance is named. Not even gonna butcher it, but that's cool. Right here. Close. A box matches and with a few missing. Hit continue. Silence of the basement suddenly feels predatory. You realize that while you've been digging through the records of forgotten life, the house above has gone silent. The door groaned and the hinges, yielding to a room that felt like a living space and more like a sterile afterthought. Inside there was Vic, not with the oppressive rot that surrounds the cellar, but with the sharp stinging bite of industrial bleach and aroma. It was it was a storage room. Everything here was stripped of the curtailed warmth of coals maintained upstairs. There was hidden memories or thoughts, trickles, only metal shelving and oppressive scent of chemical cleaners that burned the back of your throat. There wasn't much to see. You stopped towards the boxes on top of the cabinet. It was the only thing left they haven't looked into yet. You reach into the smaller of the two boxes, your hand shaking. The cardboard is soft, saturated with something that didn't just spill, but soaked in all over time. As you lift it, the bottom of the box feels stiff and tacky. Climb briefly to the shelf before pulling away with a sticky visual sound. It's heavy, too heavy for the size of the box. You hesitate, your stomach churning, chugging, but curiosity or some type of morbid compulsion wins, and you give the box a tentative shake. From inside the box, a wet, sloshing flood. Oh, I don't think we want to open it. It sounds like a piece of raw steak hitting a butcher's block, or a large chunk of meat shifting in a pool of its own fluids. Yeah, don't want to open it. The smell that wafles from the gap in the tape is unbearable now. It's concentrated stench of rot that makes your eyes water. You take a coal upstairs. His gentle smile on the way he meticulously stacks the plates. You think of the way he looked at you, with a love that felt almost like a weight. Then you look back at the box, and the contrast is deafening. The man who loves you so deeply is the same man who kept this, whatever this is, in the basement. You stare at the slightly bigger box, wondering if some things are better left in the dark. But your fingers are already settled down in the smaller of the two, reaching for the flap on top of the second box. As I'll ever be. I might have to censor some stuff, though. Yes. The cardboard gives away with a dry crickle as you uncover the opening. You don't find a keepsake or forgotten heirloom. Oh, I know. Instead, staring back at you is from a bed of dried blood, plus, and God knows what, is a scorched, skinless remains of a human head. Yeah, kind of figured. The features are a ruin of charcoal carnage, the exposed muscle, and a scrape a scalp long since gone, leaving a jagged, blackened skull with odd tufts of black hair. Probably one of his parents. It's a trophy of life distinguished, preserved in a state of perpetual rotting agony. The stench that erupts from the box is no longer a scent. It's a physical force, a vacant clawing mission of ancient death and chemical chemical preservatives that coats the back of your throat. Your stomach vaults with a violent intensity. You barely have time to turn away before you're double over, rolling up onto your rib until your ribs ache, the contents of your stomach splashing onto the cold concrete floor. The sound of your own sobbing breaths fill the room, but they feel too shallow, too thin. Your vision begins to swim the edge of the basement, bore into a dizziness whirl of gray and mahogany. The air feels like it has churned to lead, crushing the oxygen out of your lungs, and the sterility of the object sinks in. This wasn't just a macabre curiosity. It was a testament to something monstrous. Yeah, I think we already know who the monster is. Panic, cold, and electric surges through your veins. You stumble backward, your heels catching on the uneven floor. The silence of the house above, which had felt peaceful until an hour ago, now feels like a predatory silence. Predatory silence, a held breath. You think of Carl's gentle touch, the softness of how he speaks, the closeness of how he cares. The contrast is a sickening whiplash. The man who loves you with all his being, now meticulously stacks plates and wears a pink apron daily, has been keeping a headless corpse in the dark. Yeah. Who knows what else? Hysteria is too small of a word for the feeling that takes hold of you. You want to scream, but the sound dies in your throat, replaced by a frantic animal need to get away from the box, the smell and the memory of the thing. And the house, probably. Most likely the house, too. You begin to scramble back towards the stairs, your breath coming in jagged. And Rack gasps until familiar arms found their way around your wrist, only pulling you tight to his chest. The other clamped heavily on your eyes. What mess you made in front of my mother, honey. Why did you do that to your mom? First impressions are everything to you know. The stack of his touch was like a electric jolt, and your instincts screamed for distance. With a sound of panic, you twist violently in his grip, shoving your elbows into his chest and kicking out with everything you had. You managed to break one arm free, your hand clawing at the air, desperate to find any exit from the nightmare of concrete and rot. Cole didn't flinch. Instead, his expression shifted from a tender smile and something clinical, almost bored. Suddenly, the strange floating locks of his hair surged forward like snakes. They lock us up. Before you could scream, the latch around your wrist and ankles pinned you flat against the cold, damp floor. The grip was absolute. The inescapable bind that crushed the breath out of your lungs. His hands gently covered your eyes once more. As you struggle, the pain squirming sensation laced over your head. A sharp, searing pressure begins to build behind your eyes, a localized explosion of white noise that drowned out the sound of your own frantic heartbeat. It felt as though the needle was being driven slowly into the center of your brain, triggering the blind migraine that bored the world into a smear of gray and shadow. Your muscles went slack, the fight draining out of you, as the overwhelming pain transitioned into a heavy, numbing lethargy. Cole leaned down, his face hovering just inches from yours. His voice was now a low, melodic hum that vibrates through your skull. You always were too curious for your own good, my love, he whispered, his eyes devoid of warmth that they had beheld downstairs. But seeing you here reminded me of them, the way they used to look at me, with the same misplaced curiosity, the same judgment. They never loved me. They deserved every damn second of what happened. They were in the way of life I wanted to build. Our life together. So he RIP'd his parents. When you wake up, we could pretend this little excursion never happened. And I could pretend you truly love me. And everything I am. Wednesday, ... The taste of something incredibly bitter wasn't the first thing you felt, clinging to the roof of your mouth. You tried to blink, but your eyelids felt as though they had been glued shut. Remnants of the bad dream lingered behind your eyes. When the words finally flicker into view, it was a company of your bedroom and a man. He was familiar. Who was he again? Well, did we just loop? He tried to sit up, and the room performed a slow, sticking tilt, the walls sliding down sideways, as a wave of nausea surged from your gut to your throat. It wasn't natural sickness. It was a chemical heaviness, a sluggish fog that churned your blood into lead and your thoughts into bored watercolors. Easy, my love, just a little more sleep. The man's voice murmured, sounding as if it were coming from the bottom of a deep well. It swept backlit by the soft glow of the bedside lamp. He was serene, wearing a expression of heartbreaking and tenderness. He leaned over you, pressing a damp cold cloth on your forehead with a tentative touch. He tried to remember how he had gone back to bed, but the memory was a jagged hole, smoothed over by the layer of artificial numbness. He had such a scary episode, Cole whispered, his eyes searching yours for a flicker of the disorientation he had carefully covered. Cole, that's right, his name was Cole. You should have told me you weren't feeling well. You must have been exhausted. He moved with a practice-driven grace, shifting to the other side of the bed and adjusting the pillows beneath your head. On the nightstand was a small tray, a bottle of red liquid, and a thing of something clear. What was it called again? Cough syrup? Cole had been very busy, ensuring the gaps of your memory remained wide and unbridgeable. Are you hungry, Wyan? The red liquid in the bottle simmered, casting the light of the bedside lamp. He stared at it, your mind trying to latch onto the single clear thought, but your brain stuffed out every spark of recognition before it could ignite. Your tongue felt heavy, coated in that bare residue. I don't know. He managed to whisper. The words sounded like they belonged to someone else, distant and hollow. Cole's expression softened into almost painful level of devotion. He didn't seem bothered by your dissertation. If anything, he seemed to relish in it, his eyes drinking in your confusion with the quiet suffocation. He reached for the bowl, the ceramic clicking softly against the wooden nightstand, and shifted closer. Just a few slips, honey. It'll help settle your stomach. He murmured. His voice voice a hum that seemed to vibrate in the marrow of your bones. He dipped a small silver spoon into the crimson liquid and brought it to your lips. The movement was so gentle that you instantly opened your mouth to accept the spoon. Don't. It was tomato. That's what it was. Gull beamed. Very good. He called softly. He continued to feed your dinner that way. I'm getting cough up a lung, though. It's tomato. He stayed with you until you fell back to sleep. Wednesday ... And now we can skip. And that was You Make This House a Home, Day 3. If you like my content, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, comment down below, and liking the video. See you guys next time.